Hello there. Been a while since we've been back at the bar, hasn't it? Since July, actually, and I'm sorry to say that I've committed a terrible crime. I claim to have created a theory of everything, answering all the greatest questions in One Piece. What's the world government's big secret? What is the name of the ancient kingdom? What is the One Piece? The giant straw hat? The meaning of the D-Clan? Everything. Or so I had thought. I dropped this on you guys and then disappeared for months, thinking that I had left all my I's dotted and T's crossed, but it turns out I forgot to answer some of the most important and pressing questions of all. Why the hell did Roger laugh, and why did he say he was too early? Something you guys haven't failed to remind me in the comments, and for that I am both grateful and sorry. I'm sorry to have left you hanging. To make it up to you, I'm back with an answer, as well as a new channel opening. Credit to LeeJay, my man, for single-handedly making this happen. He is an incredible animator, and if you want to check out more of his work, I highly recommend giving him a follow on Twitter, link in the description. So, last time we left off with a lot of new theories established regarding the history of the One Piece world, and I want to focus in on one in particular, the nature of the One Piece itself. In my mega theory, I suggested the idea that One Piece is not an object, but a place, the name of the ancient kingdom that Clover wasn't allowed to speak, the mythical kingdom of One Piece, formerly a part of Laugh Tale, a direct parallel to the mythical kingdom of Shandora, formerly a part of Jaya. The original kingdom from 800 years ago, formerly ruled by the true royalty of antiquity, the Clan of D. If you want to get the full picture, I'd go check out that video, but moving on, this theory seems to fit a bunch of puzzle pieces together at once. Plus, the One Piece doubling as proof of the Celestial Dragon's illegitimacy makes their motives a lot more clear. But does it explain why Roger laughed? If One Piece is simply a place rather than a silly object or a joke, then his reaction doesn't line up, which is why I lean toward a different interpretation entirely. I don't think Roger was laughing at the treasure itself. In fact, I don't think Roger even found the treasure. Take it a step further, what if the One Piece has yet to actually be found by anybody? I know, I got some explaining to do. First off, if this is true, then what did Roger actually find when he got to the final island, if not the One Piece? Well, how about the final piece of the Rio Poneglyph? Remember that one? We've been so focused on the 4 road poneglyphs that you may have forgotten there's actually a secondary goal tied to the regular ones. The Rio Poneglyph is said to be the one which tells the true history of the world. By taking certain passages from 9 specific poneglyphs, you are able to form an entirely new one, which tells you the real story. Acquiring the Rio Poneglyph is a major driving force for Robin as a character, and it's something that we will have to accomplish in order to understand what happened in the Void Century. It's almost a prerequisite to becoming Pirate King. We know for a fact that Roger accomplished this because Rayleigh himself confirmed it for us back in Shabandi Archipelago. So I'm proposing that when Roger got to Laugh Tale, what they found was the final part of the Rio Poneglyph, which finally put the full picture together and painted the story of the Void Century that's been hidden for so long. Roger referred to the treasure Joy Boy left behind with some choice words as a tale full of laughs, and thus the name of the island. So it implies that whatever he was reacting to and laughing at was a story of some kind, and unless Joy Boy was there in the flesh to speak with him, it's very likely he was reading that story off of something. And the only thing I can think of that would have remained preserved there for 800 years is a poneglyph. So the scenario goes kinda like this. Roger and crew get to Laugh Tale, finally complete the Rio Poneglyph, and learn the true story left behind by Joy Boy. Maybe there's something funny about the story, especially considering a literal cartoon human is the one largely responsible for writing it, but in my opinion, the biggest reason Roger laughed after reading it is largely connected to the very same reason he claimed to be too early. The nature of One Piece was revealed to them through this account of history, and the truth about this treasure may be what sparked the laughter. While the Rio Poneglyph likely explains what the One Piece actually is, I think it also makes it clear that the treasure is not there, or rather, that the treasure is not anywhere. Yet. Assuming the Kingdom of One Piece is a place, then it makes sense that it would have been destroyed along with its original civilization. Going by our conversation with Clover at O'Hara, if the ancient kingdom is said to no longer exist, and if the kingdom's name is actually One Piece, then that means the One Piece treasure, likewise, no longer exists. A great kingdom, hell, anything you think the One Piece is, it doesn't even have to be a place. The principle still applies. Is it possible here that what Roger found on Laugh Tale was not One Piece, but a story explaining what One Piece used to be? That the treasure they had been searching for, this entire time, crossing the most dangerous seas in the entire world, the ultimate treasure as a cap-off to Roger's great life and the cornerstone of their adventure, isn't even there. The final island, rather than containing one of 15 million different variations of jewels and gold and riches, anything you can imagine, instead contains nothing. Maybe at one point the One Piece existed, but after the Void Century it was destroyed or cast away in order to keep it from falling into the wrong hands. Maybe the story explains that Joy Boy would someday return and bring the One Piece, whatever it is, back to its original state. And thus, Roger was too early to find the treasure, because the treasure doesn't exist yet. In his journal, Oden referred to the One Piece as a vast treasure, with that term specifically in quotes, possibly suggesting sarcasm and implying that the treasure was not actually vast at all. All that effort only to be met with an IOU, a message telling Roger to wait a few more years, time that he no longer has, and the irony of this was so overwhelming that Roger couldn't help but laugh. And I can't help but think this holds some somber implications for how Roger's journey actually ended. He knew of his coming death while keeping the severity of his condition from his crew. He was the first one to break the silence with laughter when faced with the so-called treasure, or lack thereof, and only then the rest followed suit. They left the island with just as much as they had come there with, only now it was clear that the answer they awaited was off in a distant sea they could never reach together, a sea 24 years well into the future. And without knowing exactly who this Joy Boy would be, Roger was left to place his faith in his son to return and finish the job. Not to find the One Piece, but to create it. To make the treasure a reality once again. But contrary to his belief, the job of creating the One Piece is possibly one that can only be done by Joy Boy himself, which turned out not to be Ace, but Luffy instead. And it fits thematically the more we think about this. Luffy has inherited not only Joy Boy's will, but his powers as well. He's the one who wants to become Pirate King arguably more than anyone else, the one destined to succeed Roger and find the One Piece. More importantly, he's the embodiment of freedom and imagination, the very qualities that drove Roger to find it in the first place. Oda loves to connect the ideas of freedom and imagination to the idea of dreams. For example, look at the Thousand Sunny. The sun and the dawn are commonly connected to the idea of liberation in One Piece, and yet Frankie also wants this ship to become the Ship of Dreams, and it will only be possible once Luffy takes this ship to the ends of the world. This symbolism is even seen on Luffy himself. We learn from Road to Laugh Tale Volume 4 that Joy Boy's powers come directly from the imagination. In Gear 5, Luffy is able to fight as freely as possible, limited only by what his mind will allow. In other words, Joy Boy's power, the power of imagination, can better be described as the power to make dreams a reality. And when did he make his appearance within Luffy? In front of a full moon, during the night, the same time of day when people go to sleep. With his pillowy white hair and eyebrows, almost a visual metaphor for having your head in the clouds, Joy Boy was a dreamer. He is greatly associated with freedom and dreams by extension, and so is Luffy. Luffy is the biggest dreamer in the story and is constantly making the impossible possible. So, if One Piece, the ultimate dream, doesn't exist yet, it makes sense that Joy Boy, the ultimate dreamer, is the one who will make it a reality. The One Piece is certainly real, and Luffy will be the one to make it so. When they eventually reach Laugh Tale, they will likewise find nothing there yet, but as Rayleigh once stated, when they learn the truth, the Straw Hats may come to a different conclusion. Maybe Luffy will refuse to let this be the end of the road and decide to create the One Piece himself. It would really bring everything full circle. In this scenario, the One Piece could only exist because Luffy willed it so. The only reason the treasure will become real is because Luffy chased after the dream rather than the object itself. His motivations were without greed and centered around adventure, and in return he wins the most valuable treasure out there. He held on to that idea, the dream, for so long that whether or not it's real doesn't matter. People's dreams never end, and the dream alone has the power to change the future, even if it doesn't yet exist. It's the reason he screamed at Usopp for asking Rayleigh about the treasure. Look at what he says here. I don't want to hear where the treasure is. I don't want to know if the treasure exists or not. I don't know for sure now, but everyone out there is risking their lives for it. If Rayleigh tells us anything about it right now, I'll quit being a pirate." And to him, that's all that matters. In maintaining the dream, they maintained the adventure, and ultimately in doing so, Luffy gained the powers he would later need to make that dream a reality. So, after a conversation like this, of course he's the one that Rayleigh chose to support. I wonder what kind of answer Rayleigh would have given them had they not taken the high road. If it would fall in line with what I'm saying. Hey, sorry to break it to you guys, but the One Piece no longer exists. And naturally, hearing this would be enough of a reason for them to end the journey right there, just as Luffy said. He even kinda implies to Robin that the time is still not right, that something regarding what they found on Laugh Tale 20-some-odd years ago is still inaccessible. Quote, "It seems that we and those at O'Hara were too hasty. Even if I told you everything in history right now, there's nothing you could do about it. But if the One Piece is currently out there somewhere, then what's the problem? The natural conclusion to make, at least with all this evidence in hand, is that Roger was too early for the real treasure, and unless certain criteria are met, so would be anyone else who got to Laugh Tale, because whatever is supposed to be there no longer is. So if the One Piece is a place and it's currently destroyed, it'll have to be rebuilt someday, right? Otherwise, what's the point? And if its ruins are preserved somewhere, then where is it? Going off of my last theory, perhaps it's buried beneath the sea, a result of Poseidon's powers, a direct parallel to the lost city of Atlantis. Or maybe it's petrified in stone, a result of Boa's powers, which Blackbeard has recently taken an extreme fascination towards. Either way, not much of anything remains of the ancient kingdom, and it's likely a far cry away from what it must have been like in its original state. A tattered memory of the past, waiting to be restored to its former glory. And interestingly enough, Oda has provided more than one vehicle to allow this to happen. First, it's completely possible that we already have what we need in the form of Joy Boy's Devil Fruit. Its awakening unlocks the full potential of the user through the use of their imagination, and while so far it's only been used for fighting, I wouldn't be surprised if it had other, non-fighting related functions. Think of the ancient weapons, for example. Yet another thing to come from the Void Century. Yes, they are capable of destruction, but they likely also serve some secondary function or purpose. Is there a secondary purpose behind the power locked away in the Gum Gum Fruit? Maybe. Next, if there is a massive treasure or kingdom petrified somewhere, then it stands to reason that Blackbeard knows about it already and is currently seeking out Boa for the express purpose of undoing the effects. Because from how their conversation went, it's either someone or something else who needs to be destoned, and since we haven't seen what Boa's awakening could do, then an entire place being petrified is still very much on the table. But the last choice is the most interesting. Many of you are aware how Law's fruit comes with a special secret ability, how, in exchange for his own life, he can make someone immortal. But a lot of people tend to forget that there was another special devil fruit with a secret power introduced in the very same arc as the immortality surgery, the Heal fruit, currently in the possession of the Tontada princess, Mancherry. This fruit has a very unique and special ability that was briefly brought up and never spoken of again since, and I can't blame you for forgetting. I wouldn't have known this either were it not for Parvision. He has a way of finding those small bits of information that really matter. Well, turns out Mancherry's fruit allows her to do something incredibly unique. In exchange for some of her lifespan, Mancherry can use her fruit to restore any damaged inanimate object to its original form. Quite the specific ability, right? I wonder why Oda would put such a unique and seemingly important detail in the story if he planned on canning it shortly after the Dressrosa arc. Maybe the simple explanation is that he didn't can it at all. People are still wanting for Law's immortality surgery to come back into play, but I think we should also be keeping an eye on Mancherry. If the One Piece is damaged and tucked away, destroyed and discarded, hidden until the right person comes along to restore it, then would it not make sense for Mancherry's power to be used here? For Mancherry to use her Devil Fruit to restore the One Piece or the Kingdom of One Piece to its original state. It would be nothing short of a miracle to see such a relic of history be resurrected in front of us, in the same state it was left 800 years ago. Mancherry's power could show us firsthand what the world government so fervently sought to destroy. Now, I'm not sure what kind of toll this would take on her life, but At the very least, she's already a staunch supporter of the Straw Hat crew, so at least the motivations are there. However, while all of these are fun possibilities to consider, when I make theories, I try my best to find places elsewhere in the story where Oda has already set an example for us, because if we find patterns, that can give us an insight into how he plans to write the story later on. Because Oda is a writer who does a lot of intentional setup. He writes with a purpose, and even seemingly inconsequential chapters can have massive implications for the story overall. And one of the most important places to look for things like this would be in the beginning of the story, because at that point in publication, Oda had planned for One Piece to be a lot shorter than it currently is. The pieces he was setting up early on were intended to have their payoffs much sooner. He was much more strictly managed by his editors, and anything deemed unnecessary was cut out. Also, that each chapter was an essential step forward in setting up the world and the characters. Every chapter, that is, except for one. Chapter 22, titled Strange Creatures, but more commonly recognized as the Gaimon Chapter. And look, this is no slight against Gaimon. Everyone seems to like Gaimon. He's very likable and memeable, okay? But Gaimon and his island don't seem to offer much to the overall narrative of the story. He's a funny little side character, but overall his inclusion feels kind of pointless. Or is it? You see, there are actually quite a few significant things that happen in this chapter, sprinkled in with subtle details so important that I now believe Gaimon to be one of the most brilliant foreshadowing devices that Oda has used in the story so far. First, let's summarize what actually happens in this chapter. Luffy, Zoro, and Nami arrive on a small barren island containing a small forest, which is inhabited by nothing but weird hybrid animals. They are told to leave and are attacked by a mysterious figure who ends up being this guy. Turns out, this guy, Gaimon, has been scaring people away with his Trial of the Forest for the past 20 years, all in an effort to protect his secret treasure. See, he used to be a pirate, and 20 years ago he found a bunch of treasure chests on top of this little plateau. After one little slip, he falls off and lands directly into an empty chest below, becoming stuck within and subsequently abandoned by his crew. Because he is stuck inside this box, he is unable to climb back up and claim his treasure, and thus is forced to protect it from other would-be looters until the day he can somehow make it up there himself. After hearing his story, Luffy offers to help him claim his treasure back and goes to the top of the cliff, but upon reaching the top, Luffy refuses to drop the boxes down below. Because it turns out, the chests are empty. Someone got to them long before Gaimon did, and thus the treasure Gaimon has been guarding for the last 20 years was never actually there. In the end, he decides that his small animal friends there on the island are his actual treasure, and stays behind to continue his job as the forest guardian, and with that they all part ways. In the small chance it didn't already come together for you, let me point out why this chapter is so crazy. First off, Gaimon himself. I'll just say it, this guy is straight up a symbol for Joy Boy and the One Piece, plain and simple. He's introduced to us as the keeper of the island. This island can be considered his, as he was the only human inhabiting it for many years. He spent all those years on this island protecting his mysterious treasure. Any pirates trying to claim that treasure are typically scared away by his Trial of the Forest. In the same vein, Laugh Tale can effectively be considered Joy Boy's island. Joy Boy, while long gone, is in a way its keeper. It is a presumably barren island since no one has been able to reach it, but it does contain Joy Boy's treasure, a treasure that has been protected from the outside world for many years, and any pirates looking for it have almost always been driven away by the trials undertaken on the Grand Line. Joy Boy was likely a very cartoonish and ridiculous person, if his powers, the Gorosei's words, and Roger's reaction are anything to go by. Likewise, Gaimon is one of the most hilarious and frankly ridiculous character designs in the entire series, let alone the fact that he is literally a man stuck in a treasure chest, and Joy Boy is a figure whose treasure we've been chasing after the entire story. Let's also notice that Gaimon guarded his treasure for 20 years, the same amount of time that the Kozuki were told to await Joy Boy's return. And lo and behold, after 20 years of guarding, the real Joy Boy, Luffy, arrives on Gaimon's island to finally show him the truth about his long-lost treasure. Apply the rest of this theory and things make even more sense. Gaimon's treasure boxes were ultimately empty because he had gotten to them too late, thus he spent 20 years guarding absolutely nothing. Roger was the inverse. His infamous treasure, the One Piece, didn't yet exist when he arrived on Laugh Tale because he had gotten there too early, and so he spent his entire life chasing after a treasure that wasn't yet real. However, for the both of them, Luffy would be the one to finally come around and finish the job. I find a few other things exceptionally interesting about this chapter, if you believe there's more. This is the first chapter in One Piece where we get a visual map and explanation of the One Piece globe. This is where we first learn about the structure of the Red Line and the X shape formed by its intersection with the Grand Line. And in the same chapter, Luffy determines that they'll need to sail completely around the world in order to find the One Piece. Quite the chapter to introduce these concepts, wouldn't you say? How about the fact that this island doesn't really have a name? It's simply referred to as the Island of Rare Animals. Laugh Tale, likewise, didn't have a name for the better part of 800 years. If we can assume that devil fruits trace their origins back to Laugh Tale or Joy Boy in some way, then we can see a cool parallel going on here on Gaimon's island, since his island contains a bunch of rare, weird hybrid animals, considered treasures in their own right. So, we can maybe draw a connection to devil fruits, which similarly turn the user into a hybrid between man and something else. What about the fact that Gaimon was almost a Straw Hat? Even if only for a moment, Luffy did ask him to join the crew, although Gaimon ended up turning him down. Had he said yes, though, they would have accepted him aboard. The thing is, Luffy doesn't just hand out crew member slots to people. Sure, he has a couple joke moments here and there, and at one point it actually resulted in a new crew member, but in Gaimon's case it felt markedly different. Luffy inviting Gaimon onto the crew was not a moment meant to be humorous. Oda played it completely straight. Nami didn't object, Luffy didn't come off as hasty, it was a genuine request. That really doesn't happen a lot, and when it does, it's usually reserved for actual crew members, not one-off characters like this. In 2001, Oda claimed that Gaimon was his favorite One Piece character. Is it possible that the crew member offer may have contributed to this? Is it possible that his reasons for liking Gaimon so much went beyond our knowledge of the story, that he knows something we don't about the Gaimon chapter and what it means? Well, I think I got the message. I think the Gaimon chapter is going to be a direct parallel to the moment Luffy finds the One Piece, or rather, doesn't. I think that this tiny, seemingly pointless chapter is inversely among the most important chapters in the story. It not only may be telling us something about the One Piece itself, but also about Roger's initial reaction. And what sealed the deal for me is the moment that Luffy found the empty boxes. Once he had heard Gaimon's story, he climbed up to the treasure and revealed that there was nothing inside. But while Gaimon cried and lamented the truth, Luffy did something completely different. He laughed. Thank you once again for stopping by the Hidden Island. What do you guys think? Is Gaimon more important than we've been led to believe? Is it all just one big joke? Things are coming to a head in the story now, and I wouldn't be surprised if we got our answers soon. And when we finally do get to Laugh Tale, just keep this guy in mind. The relevance of his character arc may surprise you. If you liked the video, please make sure to like and subscribe to keep the music alive. And I hope you've enjoyed the show today because I sure enjoyed putting it on. Until next time, have a beautiful day, a pleasant night, and a wonderful romanced dawn.